Hi, my name is Ann Sermons Gillis, and I am a member of Unity of Charleston, and I'm interviewing some of our members. Today, I'm really happy to have Peggy Benton. Hi, Peggy.
Hi. Hi, Ann.
Well, I need to know some more about you. I don't know a whole lot about you except that I got your name mixed up and I got where you live mixed up. And so there may be some other people that don't know the details of your life. So we'd like to get to know a little bit more about you. Where do you, where were you born?
I was born in New Mexico in, in an unincorporated area. It's called Bernalillo County. Ultimately, Albuquerque kind of came out there, but it's kind of North Rio Grande Valley area.
So it was not in an urban area, you're more in a rural area where you were born.
It was definitely rural when I was growing up. Yes, definitely. I had a horse. I used to ride along the ditch banks down to the Rio Grande River, cross the river, ride up on the mesa, spend my time out there. There was nothing but tumbleweeds. And one time I caught a rattlesnake. So
Oh,
that was my life. Very different.
oh my goodness. Well, I
Yeah.
know you don't live there now. Where do you live now?
I live in kind of the Wando area. It's basically Berkeley County, just across the river from Mount Pleasant.
And what brought you to Charleston, the area?
I had two grandbabies were here, and so I decided if I were going to get to know them, I had to be here to do it. And so I retired and came here.
And that's what got me here too, my two grandchildren. So
Right,
it's a
right.
big incentive. Well, are you married or single?
I'm single, single.
And you do have, you got grandchildren, so you must have
Yeah,
children.
right. I have a one daughter, and she's a psychologist. And I have to say, I grew up in New Mexico, and after college, um, I had an internship in Washington, D.C., and then decided I wasn't really the D.C. type, the political. So I got a job at San Francisco State University as a professor there. So I spent the last 35 years in San Francisco before I came here.
And what did you teach there?
Um, I taught, the department is called Instructional Technologies, but it's using technology to help people communicate or to instruct and so forth. So I had been one of my hobbies had been photography. So I taught Photoshop, I taught digital video and web design. So those kind of things. But how to use the tools in the way that everybody wants to use them and have fun.
Wow. Boy, that's a useful skill. All of those skills are useful skills in today. So you're one of that was one of those jobs that wasn't gonna disappear because the field just got bigger and bigger.
Right, right. I was kind of lucky that as I got to San Francisco, the technology revolution was happening, and I kind of got on the wave early and rode it, So with every new development, I added that skill to my repertoire because they weren't teaching it at that point. There weren't courses in Photoshop or that kind of thing.
Really? Yeah,
Right.
Photoshop is quite it's quite a program. It's pretty complicated.
Hmm.
Well, so we're going to move a little bit from the technical and the career to the spiritual. How did you start your spiritual journey?
I started my spiritual journey, particularly with Unity, pretty early. I used to sit with my grandmother at her kitchen table and we listened to Unity radio. This was before I started school. So it was, I like my memory is probably around 5 years of age. And I remember that I think when I was 6, I started getting the Wee Wisdom. It was a little booklet and it for kids that it just introduced in my mind kind of healthy ways of thinking and living, and some of the things in there were even cartoons, so I kind of learned to read with that. And so very early on, I would, as I say, we would listen to Unity Radio. I had no idea that there was a church related to that at all, that we didn't have a Unity church in our area. So it wasn't actually till I got to San Francisco that I actually saw that there was a church. But there was an intervening variable that came along after I was 6, I went to school, and it was a Catholic school. So I already had been kind of introduced to Unity New Thought ideas, which are really very simple. It's not like, you know, it's where a child could easily apply it to life, you know. So Catholicism, of course, is pretty elaborate. And I remember in 2nd grade, the teacher said that my father was going to go to hell because he wasn't Catholic. So I go home sobbing, and my dad just laughed, and he said, "Who would believe that God would do that just because you don't believe a certain way?" And I kind of, even at that age, fell back on what I knew about the spiritualism of Unity. And I could see that. Yeah, it didn't make sense. And so by the age of 7, I realized I can think for myself. I don't have to swallow the dogma of any religion or what anybody says unless it makes sense to me. And Unity always made sense to me. And so I think that helped me survive 6 years of Catholic school and just keep my mouth shut and think what I wanted to think. So, and when I moved to San Francisco, there were several Unity churches there. It's bigger in the California area. And so I had just a wonderful, wonderful minister. I went to the church, and they said, "Oh, there's a library in there." And I suddenly saw all the things that I had seen on my grandmother's table. And I thought, and even at that time they had Wee Wisdom. It's no longer published, but so it was like coming home to Unity, to what I already knew. And the Reverend there was just this wonderful woman. Her name was Shay St. John.
Oh my gosh. I knew
Yes.
Shay. She was in Houston for a long time. She was a friend of mine who's passed away.
Yes, I know. Yeah. So yeah, they big Unity, I guess we called it, where the central office. They took her to train and work with other ministers a part of the time. So we lost her, but she was our minister for enough years to where of course, you really get how you can really carry forth the spiritualism of Unity in a person, and it can be that. So Shay St. John was, my minister as well.
Wow, that is amazing. That's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
Yes.
Shay, yeah. Yeah, she had a great church in the Houston area as well. And I think it's in spring. Anyway, so that's great. It sounds like you had an inquiring mind, that you had enough sense to know when to ask questions and when not to. You could do that at home, but not so much at church. And it sounded like you were trusting your own knowing and your own intuition from a very young age.
Yeah, to me, it's just like Unity makes sense. I mean, it wasn't just Unity. I think we used to listen to Norman Vincent Peale.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so it kind of made sense. Whereas some of the things of Catholicism and even other religions kind of just doesn't make sense to me. The concept of a mean, punishing God, and that we're all sinners when we're all really trying to do the best we can. That kind of stuff didn't make sense, and all of the craziness, etc. So, and the other thing is, I was left-handed. So when you're left-handed, um, the nuns try to make you right-handed. So that was another little thing. So ultimately, my mother told them to leave me alone. But that was another experience.
Oh my goodness.
That's
Well,
right.
I've said many times before, and this is when I gave up on the traditional God, and that was, if God, I need to have a God that is at least as nice as I am, because I would
Right.
never do those things, because why bother if it sounds like a mean old crazy man to me. And
Right.
you figured that out. Well, through all this, you must have come up with what now is a guiding light in your life, or a philosophy. What would you say your philosophy of life is now?
Well, I think that realizing that God is within us, God is within every person. So we treat ourselves with respect, we treat them with respect, we treat the nature with respect, and so that kind of um, all-encompassing concept of God or higher power is really kind of what's important to me. And the other thing is thoughts in mind tend to produce after their kind. So watch your thoughts, watch how you think. You know,
Right.
those those are two of the main things um, that I feel like with unity are guiding principles that I adhere to.
Well, are there any books that influenced you greatly, or any books that you're reading now that you think are really good? Just, what is your interest in reading?
Um, well, I'm doing the spiritual economics, and I had read the Four Agreements many times before and given away copies. So I mean, that's one that you can revisit many times. I joined a group to read the Course in Miracles, and so it did that. And then there's there's a set of online books under the category of Way of Mastery, and so and they're actually, you can go and read them online or even download them at womlibrary.com. And so I joined a group that's studying that, which is kind of similar to, but I think simpler and a little bit more advanced than the Course in Miracles. But I see harmony in Course in Miracles and the unity principles, unity way of being. You
Okay,
know,
thank you. And so what are some of your passions or hobbies?
um, my passions are originally photography, and I do some painting now and art. But I got into digital media, like I mentioned, Photoshop and digital video as an extension of that. Those are just the digital tools from the real world that we live in, and so on. So I I like to, I love photography. I've been to Africa 4 times and have really amazing photographs of animals from the Okabongo Delta or the Zambezi or Kenya, Tanzania, all over. And so that's a passion that I love. I've even been able to set up my own safaris and
Wow.
then so I enjoy that. And I like I say, digital video, I enjoy that. My father, when he was 80 years old, decided that he was going to build a replica of a World War I Jenny biplane. And I thought that he had been a pilot, but I thought, well, that's still unique. And of course, we were at the idea of, I mean, the thought came up, no fool like an old fool, but he showed us, and he built his plane, and by the time he was 83, he was flying it. So I tried to document what he had done. And so I have a little video on my channel about that. And then after that, he had so much fun with it that he and a friend that was also a pilot built two little ultralights, and they would put on air shows at one of the local airstrips for people. And so I documented both of those things, because by the time they were doing the second set of the second planes, the ultralights, they were like 85 and into almost 90. So it's really a hoot, and very unusual, and very, I think, inspiring, because you can ask yourself, well, I wonder what I'll do when I'm 80. What project will I take on? What will I do? So anyway, that's at my channel. My YouTube channel is SF Peggy. Yeah, SF Peggy, because my email is sfpeggy@gmail. So it's SF Peggy, and his name is Bruce Benton. So anybody wants.
If you'll send me a link, I will put it in the
No.
description. Yeah. You'll email me a link.
So it is to see what they did. I mean, it just makes you laugh the whole time.
Oh, that's an amazing and
It is. It is. What will we do when we're 80, right?
Right. Well, in terms of, I know that you have another passion too, that you're an advocate for autism. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, for Autism Speaks is the main organization that helps get legislation passed and awareness and programs for individuals with autism. And my grandson is doing really well today, but he was diagnosed with autism at I guess he was about 3 years old. So he had a lot of individual therapy, which he was able to get because other people had advocated with the legislature here in South Carolina to get so that programs for what's called applied behavioral therapy were available to kids with autism, and the insurance had to pay for it. So that actually was a very novel idea at the time. And so they needed to carry this idea to other states and create awareness at the federal government level. So I became a legislative ambassador to Autism Speaks as a volunteer, and I was for the state of for South Carolina, and worked more closely with Clyburn's staff. And of course, we would go to the Hill to advocate and tell our stories to various senators in Washington. So, yeah. And luckily, my grandson's doing very well with that.
Oh,
so,
good.
Yeah, very high functioning.
Well, I think you have a doctorate, is that correct?
Yes.
And what does that end? What is your field?
Well,
education, your education, when you were educated,
my first career was in speech and language pathology, and I primarily worked with brain injured, and that's actually how I got my interest in technology. Was I saw these people, they'd been injured in the Vietnam War or whatever, head injury, but they would mainly sit around their rooms or even in the hospital and wait for the 1 or 2 hours a week they could have therapy. So I thought, what are other ways that we can help them with learning when they don't have, so they don't have to depend on a person all the time, because family's busy, people are busy. So that's how I began to look at technology as a way of assisting learning and getting people, to make productive use of their time. I began writing grants and so on. And gradually, as the wave of technology hit out in California, I was able to write grants to analyze software and see what it was good for, train people on what we could do with it. And I was teaching things like that at San Francisco State, and the dean called me in and she said, she said, if you'll get a doctorate, we're going to hire you on a tenure track, which is a big deal in those days. It still is, I guess. But so I was able to. So I got my doctorate at the University of San Francisco, and so it was in applied technology, basically how we use these tools. And my doctoral dissertation was all done on computers, and how we can use queuing techniques. If people are lost, sometimes you're in a big area and you don't know where to click. So this was how to use different animated cues to show people where to click and how to navigate, because we're better at that now, but in the early days, people would miss half of their instructional options because they just didn't know where to click. So, and then in the year 2000 and beyond, I began getting large federal grants so that we could, carry that message, carry that capability to the masses, basically, to teachers. We even had middle school students and so on, just really helping everybody to help each other learn this new set of skills. So,
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. Well, on our final question, I just asked, do you have any spiritual practices that you do on a regular basis? I think you somewhat mentioned some about being in the study groups, and in addition to going to some of these the study groups, do you have any other practices?
yeah, like I say, I think constantly kind of being aware. I think in unity, I'm the concept of non-duality is that is important. But so I with friends and so forth, we usually have at least one or two projects going, and so right now I actually have 3 groups that I'm participating in, and reading there's probably 8 or 10 books in the way of mastery that I'm looking at, that I'm reading now. And what's kind of cool about that is they also have you can listen to some of the books. So
Yeah.
I do that. And I like YouTube because it has lots and lots of spiritual messages from our current masters, our current way showers that are, showing, what we can do. One of those is Rupert Spira, and I like him, and Eckhart Tolle and so forth. So that's another way of accessing that,
Well, and I think you mentioned meditation as well.
Oh, meditation, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if we, I think that's one of the tools that I use to try to maintain my sanity.
Okay. Well, I want to just wonder, in parting, are there any words of advice or thoughts that you might leave us with? Anything I left out?
I think I'm grateful for the opportunities that I had, for being shown unity at a very early age, and for the friends and so forth that I have here. So I guess the message I would leave is gratitude.
Well, I'm grateful that you're here with me today. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. Thank you, Anne. Namaste.
Namaste.